Great. All right, so hello everyone. My name is Rachel Lake. I'm the Massachusetts Outreach Coordinator for the Commonwealth Wind project. We are here tonight for one of our monthly open houses. We've been hosting these monthly since November for both the Commonwealth Wind and Park City Wind projects. So first, I just want to give a shout out to all the folks here at the Osterville Village Library who've been hosting us when we're here hybrid. And we've been doing these meetings both hybrid here at the library and via Zoom and virtually via Zoom. And we'll continue to do these monthly as well. So we will get started. All right, so just again, a couple housekeeping rules for folks on Zoom. At any point during the presentation, you can use the raise hand button to raise your hand or submit a question using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Once we get to the Q&A at the end of our presentation, we'll take both questions from the room here at the Osterville Village Library and from Zoom. So you could do that at any point during the presentation. Feel free to raise your hand or submit a question on the Q&A. So just a quick overview tonight. Want to get a sense from the room. Any folks who this is their first meeting tonight? Okay, great. Welcome. So what we'll be doing tonight is we have been doing kind of a series of deep dives where we've been picking a couple of questions that we've been getting repeatedly or questions that folks are looking for more information of. So while we will be doing kind of a short project review at the beginning, we're going to be spending the majority kind of focused on one topic. And tonight that is our onshore underground utility infrastructure and the route that we'll be taking. And then we will kind of talk about some next steps looking forward and discuss some of our next meetings. So to get started, again, my name is Rachel Lake. We're joined here by Pat Johnson, our External Affairs Manager, who folks may know. And also joining us virtually is Ken Kimmel, our Vice President of Development for Offshore Wind, and some of our other staff as well. So those folks will be online as we get into the Q&A. So to start off, I really wanted to just get a sense of where this project is, kind of what this project is in scope of a map. So the image you'll see here up on the screen, and for folks on Zoom on your screen, is an area that is south. Oh, sorry. Is an area that is about 20 miles south of Martha's Vineyard and about 40 miles south of Barnstable. So all of these outlined shapes are different lease areas that the federal government, specifically the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, have outlined as federal lease areas for offshore wind projects. So AVANGRID, the company that both Pat and I work for, is working currently on 3 projects in this general area and then another project further south. So just want to kind of go over a little bit of these projects more specifically. So this teal shape up top is the Vineyard Wind 1 project. Folks will probably be pretty familiar from the news. This is a project that's currently under construction. So this is 50% owned by AVANGRID and 50% owned by another company called Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners. So AVANGRID is a part owner of this project. This is the first major offshore wind project currently under construction in the United States. And further south in this dark green area is a project called Park City Wind. That project is 100% owned by AVANGRID, and that is currently in permitting and development. And then further south in this light green area is the project that we'll be discussing tonight. That's Commonwealth Wind. So again, that project is 100% owned by AVANGRID and is currently in permitting and development. So these areas are very specifically where the wind turbines themselves will be. And then not on this map, because it's much further south off the coast of the Carolinas, is a 4th project that AVANGRID is working on in permitting development called the Kitty Hawk Wind project. So those are kind of the 4 offshore wind projects that AVANGRID is currently working on. Next, kind of wanted to go over some key kind of facts and figures. So again, just for placement, so for folks' minds, again, this area where this map is shows where the physical turbines will be. And again, that's about 40 miles south of Barnstable and 20 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. And then our project will bring the electricity from these turbines in a submarine cable, and that will be landing in Barnstable with a proposed landing underneath the paved parking lot at Dowdens Beach, and then making its way up through public roadways and a duck bank, which we'll be talking about tonight, and interconnecting to the ISO New England grid. So that's the major grid that all of New England gets their power from. We'll be connecting the power into that at the existing West Barnstable substation, which is owned by Eversource. So as far as capacity wise, this project is about a 1,200 megawatt capacity project. It again will connect in at the West Barnstable substation, and we anticipate this project will be starting up in 2028. So that will be, you know, flip a switch, turbines will be going. And a little bit of context about what 1200 means. So this project is a 1200 megawatt project, meaning that this will be able to provide clean renewable energy to approximately 700,000 homes and businesses here in Massachusetts. And as far as a carbon emission standpoint, this is about the equivalent of gas emissions of 2.35 million US tons per year, which is the equivalent roughly of taking about 460,000 cars off the road each year. In addition, this will create, you know, thousands of jobs in Massachusetts and in New England. And so a little bit more of the scale and scope of this project that we're discussing tonight. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Pat Johnson to take over.
Hi all, great to see you all tonight. Thanks for coming out. So tonight we really want to focus on the route choice for this project, and there's two of them, and I'm going to go into detail on it. We have some sort of analysis of the options there, whether it's basically going up Wiano Ave Main Street, Osterville West Barnstable Road, or whether it's going out a little further to the east up Old Mill Road and a series of roads further up through that area. So I'm going to go through a couple slides here, focus on that. Love to have questions on that once we're done, or anything you want to ask about. So just first, what are those two choices? So this first route choice, this is where the duct bank, the cemented case duct bank of the cables will be buried under roadways in the town. Option one is in yellow. So we land under Dows's Beach parking lot, come out the Causeway Road, take a left on the section of East Bay Road that goes up towards Wiano Avenue. We take a right on Wiano Avenue and essentially proceed mostly north that entire way, changing up onto Main Street in the village center, where Main Street and Wiano meet, and then proceeding north up Main Street, bearing right on Osterville West Barnstable Road. We cross 28 on Osterville West Barnstable Road, proceed further north. We bear right on Old Falmouth Road, north of that, getting into Marshall's Mills, and proceed north to Old Stage Road, Oak Street, and then connect to the electric grid up at a substation up on Oak Street in West Barnstable. So that's option one, and those are all the roadways right there. Option two, what we call our alternative route, sometimes we call it the Old Mill Road route. We'd instead take a right out of the Dows's Beach parking lot driveway onto East Bay Road going towards Main Street. We'd cross on East Bay, cross Main Street, proceed north on Old Mill Road. Then that turns into Five Corners Road at a certain point, or Bumps River Road, that's Old Mill to Bumps River Road, Lumber Mill Road. Actually, Five Corners is missing here. So I think it's Old Mill to Five Corners Road to a stretch of Bumps River, then Lumber Mill, and then we meet Old Falmouth Road up and proceed those same route options up Old Falmouth, Old Stage to Oak Street. So we cross 28 on Lumber Mill Road. That would be the 28 crossing. So those are the two roadway options for the onshore route. So in terms of what's involved in this, so what are we talking about in terms of this? What would happen on either of these two roadways? So first of all, just like with any road construction, continuity of resident services, particularly fire, EMS, police services, that all remains. That's paramount. That's first and foremost. At any road construction that happens, there's contingency plan. There's an immediate ceasing of construction. If anybody proximate to a construction, especially needs fire or EMS services, which are critical. So we would work really closely with the fire district and EMS team on all that, and that's first and foremost. Then in terms of construction, really, as I'll get into, their dynamics of these two choices are different, especially because of the possibility of sewer installation being part of the construction as well. So for the preferred route up Wiano Ave, Main Street, Osterville West Barnstable Road, there's a possibility that with that road choice that there'd be a partnership with the town on sewer installation at the same time that, or basically sequenced, that the town will install sewer in the same period that we are doing the duct bank installation on those roadways. And then So that would potentially be first sewer installation for any of our projects always goes first if the town is doing sewer. Before we put in our duct bank for the project. Then any other utility relocations, that particularly for all these roadways is really common public drinking water lines or national grid gas lines. Those are the main things that are currently under your roadways. So there might be some relocations, replacement of that. Vineyard Wind 1 has replaced a good deal of the common water main on the roadways they've chosen in Centerville and parts of Hyannis. And so that would be sort of the third step. Then there'd be temporary paving restoration and potentially at other points, depending on the sequencing of this work. And then at the very end, once everything's done, there'd be some permanent paving, final coat. There might be some sidewalk installation, other roadway, streetscape improvements. That would sort of all be at the end of the process. So, you know, in terms of timing, we do for duct bank installation about 100 to 200 feet per day. The town sewer is a little slower, we're like 50 to 100 feet per day. So the construction moves. And the key thing though is that it comes in sequences. So I often hear about Vineyard Wind, people say, I feel like there's been construction on Strawberry Hill Road for the longest time. And that's true, but a lot of it is in sequences. It's not the whole time that roadway being closed, it's the sewer goes in, and then the duct bank installation comes in, then the water main replacement comes in. So it's a sequence of construction activity, not just the same crews staying there doing all of those pieces at once. It's a series of crews passing through and moving north. That's kind of how it would work. And you know, the key thing for us is that we would have, you know, Rachel, myself, and members of our team on site during all this construction. There, so that if there's a neighbor who comes out of their house, wants to talk to somebody, we'd be there. We're gonna have an office in Barnstable to be accessible if people want to come by and ask questions, and we'll have a dedicated phone number, email address, always accessible for people, particularly people who live on the roadways who are impacted, or people want to know where you're going to be today. You know, I have concerns about not hitting traffic, that type of thing. We'll have people who are available to answer all those questions and be accessible to residents. Factors in our route decision. So, you know, we've been thinking a lot about this, of these two route choices, and in our permitting filings, we've described this in quite detail of how we see the choice and how we see them. So these are some of the things that we think about in terms of this choice. So first is community and town of Barnstable staff input. So particularly residents of Osterville, civic associations like the Osterville Village Association, business groups like the OBPA, and all sorts of other, any stakeholders who have feedback, as well as any feedback we get from the town manager's office, DPW, town councilors. We take all that feedback, especially from the community, really seriously. Second is water quality benefit opportunities with coordinated town Barnstable efforts. What does that mean? Is, well, is there any opportunity for, particularly given the town's really important sewer plan, the comprehensive wastewater management plan, and this route decision, is there a choice of benefiting the town or helping partner with the town on sewer installation? Part of that is also is there any major road construction already planned on any of these roadway options? And if there is, you know, if we prefer to coordinate with another utility company or the town, if they're already planning to rip up these roadways anyways, why not coordinate that instead of ripping up a roadway that otherwise wasn't planned to get ripped up? Then the constructability, viability, what does that mean? Is, you know, the roadway choices is that we kind of need north straight roadways for this stuff. Big bends and curves and sharp turns are not great for installing these cement duct banks, so we prefer more of a north to south option if we can. The time is disruption, length of work, that's really important. We don't want this to go on forever. We'd like to try to do this ideally in about 2 years, not go into, if we can avoid it, a third year. So that's something we look at a lot. Detour options is really important. The roadway choices we're looking at, you know, what if we're in this stretch of road or a different point of the route, what are the options for detours in that general area? Are we going to significantly impact a whole large stretch because of neighbors, because there aren't a lot of viable detour options in the area? Utility relocation needs, you know, we've gotten some information from the water superintendent of where are the old water main lines on these roadways, and what are you already looking to replace in terms of water mains? And then impacts to trees, public and private infrastructure, landscape features. So that includes, are there roadways where there's a ton of mailboxes and people have shrubs and fences right on the roadway? Well, we'd like to avoid those if we can. If we have any fears that we're going to impact or hit some of that stuff, we'd rather not impact people's fences and mailboxes and shrubbery and all that stuff, even if they might be in the towns right away, not actually on that person's property. We don't want to impact that stuff if we can avoid it. So for these two route options, there's a lot of similarities. Both are really straight, north to south, north going to south, going to north. There's similar needs from water main replacement. What we've gotten from your water superintendent, Craig Crocker, is that mostly all north of or south of 28 needs, a lot of it needs replacement. You got a lot of 1930s, 40s era cast iron water main in Osterville, and a lot of it north of 28 has already been replaced. So seems pretty similar according to information we got from him in terms of most of Wano Ave, Main Street, Osterville West Barnstable Road needs to be replaced south of 28, but also most of Old Mill Road, Five Corners, Lambert Mill Road south of 28, those also need to be replaced. So got some similarities there. Both are constructible, really. Our engineers looking at the routes, they're pretty straightforward there, and both have pretty good detour options. Not a lot of differences there in terms of impacting large stretches of neighborhoods because there aren't viable detours for people to get around the construction. So we did a little chart, and I'll just read each of these. So trying to figure out some other differences where we see the real decision point. So for the preferred route, I'll start sort of at the top left. So preferred route, it's likely to accelerate the town of Barnstable sewering in Osterville Village Center by 10 years from 2035 to 2025, approximately. Now, where are we getting that? The town manager, Mark Ells, been here at the Osterville Village Association in this room a number of times and was asked if AVANGRID chooses Main Street, Wano Ave, Osterville West Barnstable Road for their lines, for their duct bank, will the town bring sewer up to when they're going to do construction? He said yes. And that's what we heard from the town, that if we chose that roadway routes, the town is very likely to move that up from currently scheduled in the 2035 to 2040 range to the 2025 to 2028 range when we're planning to do the construction. So that would mean 10 years earlier than currently scheduled. If we chose the alternative route, there's no sewering planned for the whole route. Small segments just on the southernmost part of Old Mill Road. A little bit of Lambert Mill is in the plan in phase 3 up by 28, but there wouldn't be a whole roadway option because large segments of Old Mill Road, Five Corners Road, a lot of that route not in the town sewer plan. So there's really no change that we'd see. Obviously, this is just our sense of it. We'll let the town manager and the town council speak for themselves and DPW, obviously, but just our sense of it is if we chose the alternative route, Old Mill Road, those roadways, likely not going to change anything on sewering in Osterville or the town as a whole. So the second thing is construction of roadways that are already planned for major road construction. So we know that all of Osterville West Barnstable Road, Main Street and Wano, and most of good portion of Wano Ave are planned to be sewered. They're going to be ripped up in a very intrusive or a very big construction project currently scheduled in the 2035 to 2040 range. So if the town is able or willing to move up to our time frame, we would be coordinating on construction and big roadway construction that was already going to happen. We look at the alternative route, that opportunity for roadway construction collaboration seems to be lost. We'd be ripping up large segments of Old Mill Road, Five Corners, Lambert Mill, Bums River Road that don't have any plans for any major road construction. So we'd be sort of causing a big disturbance on those roadways that wasn't otherwise going to happen. Third thing is the faster sewer installation allows for a faster cleanup of the 3 bays watershed, one of the most impaired by nitrogen on Cape Cod. And see Crocker is here. I've done a lot of reporting on that in terms of what the benefit to the entire watershed would be if Osterville Village Center has got sewer. So it seems that would increase the amount of the lessening of nitrogen into 5 bays happening 10 years earlier than otherwise would happen. If we chose the alternative route, the major sewer expansion in Osterville waits until 2035 to 2040. There's also lots of complications from DEP regulations of the state that may be coming to a finalization here, which could really impact folks who own homes in the 3 bays watershed. And so there's lots to consider there in terms of that missed opportunity for moving that. Then cost savings for town of Barnstable on its planned sewer installation project in Osterville Center. We, on the other projects, Park City Wind project and the Vineyard Wind project, have helped lessen considerably in the millions of dollars costs for these sewer projects that otherwise would be borne only by taxpayer sources. So there's a lost opportunity to help subsidize with our private funding that sewer project in the Osterville Village Center that's already going to happen. If we choose the alternative route, it seems that the sewer project in Osterville Village Center would likely just be borne only by taxpayers. Then wider roadways. So I mentioned that we don't want to impact people's features on their lawns and shrubs and mailboxes. You know, when we look, I'm particularly concerned, and our team is on East Bay Road. So if we take a left out of the Douse's lot on East Bay Road towards Riano, that's a lot more open. Those couple of homes there in that area are really set back from the roadway. There's not a lot of features right on there. We really feel like we have some good ability. We're not going to damage people's shrubs and mailboxes, all that kind of stuff, right, that are right against the roadway. You go the other way, East Bay, towards Main Street, much different scenario. You're going north, you got drops off where the boat ramps are, right into East Bay on your right side. On the left side, you've got a lot of homeowners who have stuff right along the roadway. So that's big to us, that we see that as a, just that section of East Bay is one of the biggest ones that we'd be concerned about, of not wanting to provide that inconvenience to people's homes and all that. I'm just gonna get some water. So then the other thing is business mitigation funding.
Would you mind actually staying on that side projector, focus on the seeing?
Oh, good.
Yeah, thank you.
Will do. So the other thing is business mitigation funding. So we're committed to, just like we are with the Park City Wind project, is providing business mitigation funding to offset losses, particularly for the retail businesses. In that case, in Centerville, we have the same commitment here that we're plan to make. We'll maybe formalize with the town or in some way in the future. So we would offer that to businesses that are going to be impacted by construction. And again, the sewer construction is going to happen regardless. So we have the opportunity, if we chose Riano Ave, Main Street, Osterville, West Barnstable Road, to provide some private sector funding to help mitigate losses to business owners who are already going to have losses and inconvenience at some point due to sewer construction installation. So that's an opportunity there to help some of the business owners out if we combine with the town on construction. Alternative route, there's no private funds for business mitigation for the town only sewer construction, which again is going to happen no matter what on these roadways in Osterville Village Center. Lastly, the impacts on Osterville Village Center and higher traffic roadways. So this is, to us, the biggest thing that would point to the alternative route. Obviously, for the preferred route, we're going to impact the highest traffic roadways into Osterville Village. We're going to go by a bunch of businesses and retail businesses that depend on foot traffic and that depend on people coming and being accessible. The alternative route is pretty much all residential. So that's the biggest thing clearly that would push us to the alternate route. But again, as we're looking at it is, well, this similar road construction is going to happen no matter what. There's going to be disruption like this no matter what. At some point, if we do this together with the town, it lessens that. We can help. And if it's going to happen anyways, maybe that makes sense. So I'll just go through these quickly because I want to get to questions. So as we're thinking about this and we're really looking for your feedback, for us, the sewer partnership is key. The reason for that is we'd like to choose a roadway route that already has construction planned on it instead of ripping up roads that otherwise weren't planned for any construction. That's key. That's really big for us. Central to our partnership with the town thus far on the other two projects is having that tangible long-term benefit. There's a legacy financial benefit. The sewer project costs less to taxpayers. So we see that as really important. If we choose the preferred route, Main Street and the other roads, we've understand the town likely accelerate their sewer construction by a decade. And every indication, including the comments that Tom Andrews has made publicly, are pointing in that direction. So that's kind of how we see it, as pointing it to choosing the preferred route. But we'd love to hear your thoughts. In terms of commitment to Osterville, this is really important as we're thinking about construction. So we're going to leave the entire onshore route, the Dowson Beach parking lot, Causeway Road, everything better than we found it. That's a commitment. We aim to be good partners with the town and with residents of the village, good neighbors and part of the community for years to come. We have a commitment to fund several village-specific benefits in Osterville. We'd love feedback, thoughts on that. Hasn't been figured out yet, but we'd really like resident and business owner input on that. And if we choose, we have Main Street, Oster West Barnstable Road for the route choice. We're gonna offer mitigation funding to businesses, particularly the retail businesses that depend on foot traffic, people coming in. Lastly, good community outreach and partnership, especially this is focused on when we get into construction. We intend to be there. Rachel, myself, our other colleagues on site, available to residents who need to get out, need to go to medical appointment, help work with people so that we minimize their inconvenience. We're gonna have a local project office in Barnstable, dedicated phone lines and email addresses for questions. We'll provide weekly email updates on Mondays, outreach to residents. We're gonna do snail mailings, door knocks, leaflets, sending things to especially property owners who aren't around, except for the summertime, so they also know what's going on, sending it to their out-of-state addresses so that they're not left out. We're gonna reach out to every Osterville business owner. We've been doing that. We're gonna keep doing that in the months to come so that we try to meet with everybody. And we're open to your ideas on how to make this construction process as easy for everyone as is possible. And then Rachel will wrap it up and then we'll take questions.
Yeah, so this is pretty quick. We just wanted to note, so for folks who kind of are aware of the construction that has been happening for the Vineyard Wind 1 project, we just wanted to share, we just got these from our colleague over at the Vineyard Wind 1 team. This was taken, this week. This is kind of what we are expecting in terms of quality. So this is the Couples Beach parking lot. So this underwent an HDD, this underwent a landing of our submarine cables to our onshore underground utility duct bank work. And this is what the parking lot looks like currently and will look like this summer. And so we have one more image too, which just shows, we've discussed this before, the legacy of this work in these paved parking lots doesn't involve any above ground infrastructure. So this is the legacy of this underground work. It will be these kind of manhole covers, these rectangular manhole covers in the parking lot. There's absolutely no above ground infrastructure that has been left for the Vineyard Wind 1 project construction here at the parking lot. And so, folks aren't aware of kind of how intensive this construction can be. This is a little bit of the HCD before and after. So these pictures taken here were actually from the previous summer as well. So we just wanted to kind of showcase, this was an update that we got recently, just kind of the care and restoration that we take into these parking lots in between construction seasons during winter months. And then just wanted to share our upcoming dates. So just a reminder to folks, we do these monthly. We do these in a combination of hybrid meetings here at the library and via Zoom So these are our dates for the next couple months. I will throw some links in the chat, but folks can also go to our project website, commonwealthwind.com/events or commonwealthwind.com/Barnstable to learn more about these projects as well.
Rachel, will the Thursday, July meeting, is that gonna be at 5 PM start or 7 PM start? Are we sure about 7 PM start?
No, if it's here, it will be a 5 PM start.
Yeah, so that,
My
well,
apologies
it's
on
in the
that.
website, that'll be, July will be, I think we're gonna be outside in the tent at the library for that one.
And then I'll pause this here for a moment for folks to grab. All this information is on our website as well to contact Pat and I with any questions. And again, for folks who are new here, folks that have been to many of these have heard me say this before. We're happy to meet in small groups, happy to grab coffee, happy to meet with any other organizations or groups that want to meet in smaller groups to ask any specific questions. Happy to talk on the phone. And with that, we can jump into Q&A. So I'm going to stop screen sharing so that the folks on Zoom can see us here.
Questions?
Good question.
Yeah.
You stated that the sewers, that it would be for individual owners.
Mhm.
That's not correct, number one.
Okay.
Number two, you know that Senator Markey and the infrastructure bill has the money for sewers on the table. I've been told that by his assistant, and that money is a certain amount of money, but they certainly should be paying it considering what they've done at Osterville space, that much. Sewer, the whole Cape should be sewer. Everyone knows that. No one here is against the sewer. All right, what I am against is your cables. And no one's talking about that, but the fact is, the cables that you're putting here are different than the ones that are in Cobble Beach, which was snuck in during COVID, when no one could go to the meetings or even invite meetings. Number two, these cables have never been produced in the United States and have never been tested for health and safety. And those are the things that I have a problem with, going down with electronic magnetic fields through the whole town. And there's no studies on that, and we already know they're an issue. They're an issue for other places. So that is the main problem with your deal here. And then you're gonna put them through, all the way underneath the beach here. Of course, there isn't a grandmother here that's ever gonna let their child go to that beach again. All right, and I've been here for 45 years, I wasn't born here. But I can tell you, no one's gonna go to that beach again. Because you will have problems, just like they had in Block Island. They totally eroded, had to be covered, and had to be reburied. And they do emit heat, and they're going to heat up your water, which is gonna increase the bacteria count. And it's gonna increase the bacteria count as you put it all through our well water, all the way up to your substation. That heat of those cables is going to go through the ground, it is going to heat up your well water. But nobody wants to talk about that. You know, this is a problem. You make it up like it's all, everything is nice and we're gonna make it beautiful. But these are the things you don't have the answers for. Mitigation we're talking about. What about mitigation when we find out the health consequences of this? Where's the mitigation for that? Where's your insurance policy? And then when we go after you, you're not in business anymore because you're an LLC. Oh, that's that. We don't have that anymore now. So you don't even have your contracts yet. Number one, you don't even have your approvals from the town because you want to get change of zoning from Dowses Beach. And I am going after everyone to never allow that. Why should we give up that beautiful, unique property for a commercial energy company? There are a lot of other choices you can make here. And the government is the problem because they gave these licenses with no consideration of the landing sites. They didn't do their homework. And we won't even talk about the whales. But personally, I'm for hydro energy or nuclear energy. This is never going to work. By the time you get that thing up, it's going to be 30 years. All right, all these sites that they're talking about, and then it's going to be obsolete. And who's going to take it down?
There's a lot there, ma'am, and I'll do my best.
Yeah, there are a lot in there because we're not glossing over what the real problems are here. There's a lot of problems.
Understood. So I'll go through a couple of those real quick and then I'll hear more questions. So first of all, I know we talked about this at a prior meeting. I know you mentioned this, that you talked, I think Ben Thomas from Senator Markey's office, and then Senator Markey and the federal delegation got money for wastewater projects in Massachusetts, including on Cape Cod. You really should watch the presentation. I don't remember exactly the date of it, but earlier this winter, your town finance director, Mark Milne, did a whole presentation on this, the town council. What he said is, and that money coming to the federal government, where it's going is it's going to the state revolving fund, which the state manages, and that state revolving fund is where towns make applications for zero interest loans to fund wastewater projects. The town has been doing that very effectively, and it gets subsidies. So all that federal money, all that does is it means it puts like a 10%, 5%, some smaller percentage subsidy the town doesn't have to pay. But the town still needs to come up with cash for the vast majority of those wastewater projects. And I don't want to speak for the town. Obviously, Councilor Cusack is here. Others can speak about this, but I really point you to that presentation that that's where the federal money is going. And your town council and your town and your finance director made very clear that town does have a urgent need for funding to fund its 30-year comprehensive wastewater management plan. So that does remain unfunded. I know that you mentioned that the sewer lines are for residents. Yes, but the sewer mains that go into the roadways need to be installed, and then individual residents can hook up to them. There was a lot else there that maybe others. I don't know if I can remember everything you said, but I think
I don't think there was a question there, so I'm not sure you either.
yeah, but I would just say, in terms of there are power lines and power line vaults under roadways, power lines that are under earth. There are a bunch of power lines that have high capacity that are above ground as well. There's something improving here. there's no difference between the power cables going under Coble's Beach and the ones that are going propose to be going under Dowsey Beach. They're very similar power cables. They've never been,
He's not been in the United States yet.
well, thankfully, as part of this project, we worked with the company Prysmian to help push the creation of a new facility in Somerset to make these cables, but this is tried and tested infrastructure, and there's a huge benefit to having this infrastructure be under roadways and underground versus above ground. When you have infrastructure that's underground, you don't have any electric fields shutting off the cables, it's all grounded underneath the roadway.
It should be an industrial zone, not
Yes.
in a village.
Yes.
It should be over there and Brockton, where there's no
questions.
homes, where it's an industrial area where you're building. It shouldn't be in a residential neighborhood.
Well, man, it's really important, especially last thing I want to say is that I'm somebody, I'm sure a lot of the folks in this room, I trust my government officials, I trust the people. I trust that there are people, Energy Facilities Siting Board and other permitting agencies that we're putting this through, who it's their job to evaluate these proposals in this infrastructure. I'm sorry I don't trust them, but I think these are accredited individuals and departments and government institutions who know what they're doing and talking about, who will review this in detail. And if they choose to approve it, it'll be based on merits and safety and the public health safety to residents like yourself. Other questions? Sir?
I want to probably disagree with what I just heard. The first thing is that what I've heard are restrictions. I'm a data person myself. And before I would make any assertion, I would do a little bit more data collection and try and find exactly what the facts are. I understand that there are people who think that just because the government says it, it's probably something wrong with it. But all I would ask of those who disagree is that they provide data and professional opinions based on that data to bolster their cases. Thus far, I have heard nothing of the kind.
I think it's up to Commonwealth Wind to provide all that data.
And we both serve in our Energy Facilities Siting Board petitions and.
And we haven't seen it.
Oh, there's actually, you can go to commonwealthwind.com/permitting, you can read it, well, our entire, thus far, we filed with the EFSB is all online. And you can read it on that website, and we're happy to, if you have questions, let me know. Back there, and then Suzanne.
I just want to bring up the fact, the woman that spoke first, you say there's no differences between what's gone on in Centerville and what's going into Dowses. There's a huge difference, and it's the wattage. And I don't know if everyone here has been to all the meetings, but these cables are going to carry 1,400 megawatts of power.
1,200.
Or, well, 1,200 plus. And
That's after
one
it gets stepped
presentation
up.
was 1,300, you know, so what's on the paper and what you guys have said in different meetings has been different. Call it 1,200. For people that haven't been, or might not know this, that's more power than the Plymouth nuclear power plant. Okay, in an industrial area. This is going to be going not only through the beach, but through our downtown. People are going to be walking on these streets and driving on these streets every day. And that's something, I know that theoretically, you can do all the scientific models you want, but it's kind of like a shot in the dark that it's okay. We're not gonna see the impacts health-wise on this, maybe for 10 or 20 years. And that's something that any, you know, people that want clean water, we all want clean water. We don't want to see what's happening to the oceans. We see the impact of all the things that have been done in the past. It seemed like a really good idea at the time, and now we're paying the price for that. I think we just need to do much more due diligence, and in all respect to the government situation, there are so many examples over, you know, decades that people in, you know, control or in power thought something was a really good idea and they did it, and then we pay, you know, it's had huge impacts. So this is much different than Craig or Covels in terms of the wattage. That's one big major difference. And seeing your differences between how you're gonna decide the route. What about the people, you know, it just, I'm a business owner, but it doesn't have anything to do with business, it has more to do with safety. And you're putting this power in a public downtown area, you know, buffering with families and children all summer long, and we don't know what the health impacts are gonna be.
Understood. I appreciate your questions, and I would say, I can't speak to this at the same level of experts can, and we had an expert here back at our meeting in February, Chris Long, who's our consultant from the Brady Corporation. He has done extensive research, and all the modeling and all of the really detailed filings with the Energy Facility Siting Board on this topic, on any electric fields or magnetic fields from these tables, all of that. And he gave a pretty extensive presentation here back at our February meeting. That's recorded on the Osterville Library YouTube page if you'd like to watch it. And I would really recommend you or anybody else who has these questions do that. But there's nothing different between power generation like this, whether it's in Osterville Village Center or other towns or cities. There's a long history of under roadway cable and power cable distribution. Just like you talk about Pilgrim Power Plant, just like any power plant, there are power export cables either under roadways or above ground that bring that power out of that power plant, oftentimes through neighborhoods into homes. I hear a lot about Brayton Point. Brayton Point, if you come into Brayton Point, there go for whole neighborhoods and long stretches of residential homes, one roadway that brings you into that facility that for decades had a very large, I think 1,600 megawatt coal operating plant there. City of Salem up there had a huge coal plant, and right with that power facility right next to huge neighborhoods. This is a tried and tested technology of exporting power. And I couldn't speak to this as well as Chris, who did this presentation, can, but he shared a lot of information on the differences between ionizing versus non-ionizing radiation, that there is no ionizing radiation that in terms of electric power supply, that there's no history of known public health effects from proximity to electric power cable distribution. So I think we have a lot of facts, and the good thing is that, and I can probably send this to you if I can get your email address. We have a bunch of sources on this. All the sources that Chris did this presentation here back in February presented, we have links and you can read them yourself. And I'd love to share that with you if I can get your email address. Thank you. Suzanne.
Yeah, one comment, and then I have a really large question.
Sure.
My name is Suzanne Conley. I'm the chair of Save Greater Dulces Beach. Our organization is devoted to trying to make sure this does not happen at Dulces Beach. With respect to the sewering, I kind of find it disingenuous for you to, act like you're riding in on your white horse to save us. Were you not here, we would still sewer. I have said to Mr. Els a couple of times, as far as I'm concerned, the sewering project should be readjusted to put the sewering of 3 bays up front. I'm sorry, the sewering that goes along the route you just discussed. I really think that we should prioritize the sewering project when it comes to the 3 bays area, instead of pushing it into the second phase of the sewering project. So I just want to say that you're in this for profit and ease of construction, not to, this altruistic, we're going to help you sewer your village. Were you not here, we'd sewer our village. And we're going to do probably a debt exclusion, for example, 1 or 2 or maybe 3 to get that done. Maybe we'll get state money, awesome, but we're going to get it done with or without you. Now, here's my question, Patrick. I heard there's no utility above ground. Underneath the parking lot will be 3 vaults, 61 feet long, 11.5 feet wide, 8.5 feet deep, 2 feet under the pavement, 3 of them. And they will carry from offshore 1,200 megawatts of power. As my friend said, that's not just more than the output, that is twice the electrical output of the former Pilgrim nuclear power plant. And that's what you want to put in our water, where our children swim and take swimming lessons, under our sand, where they play and dig in the sand. My question is this: I've been learning a lot about underground electrical vaults. They suffer explosions and they suffer fires. And what I have said over and over, imagine a 95-degree August day with hundreds of people sitting on that beach, and one of those vaults decides to go off. There is a narrow means of egress from that beach. We don't have in our town the capacity to deal with such an emergency. All right? This is the wrong place to do this. And you've known it from the start. I told you from the start, you're gonna run into a buzzsaw on this. And there are hundreds and maybe thousands of Barnstable residents now opposed to this project as you have planned it. This is not a straight line beach, it's an estuary, it's a double embayment, it's a handicapped fishing pier, it's a wildlife habitat, it's an estuary. You told the feds that we may not even ditch up the causeway, we might micro tunnel under East Bay. And I'm not sure the people in this room understand that. Should they do that, they would take private property that exists now on East Bay Road to do this construction. What I'm saying is decades and decades, and my friend Z over there will know exactly what I'm talking about. Decades and decades of indiscriminate chemical use by human beings have flowed into East Bay. East Bay is actually a watershed, just like Three Bays, and it empties out Wocket Lake, one of the most polluted freshwater bodies we have. It drains Scudder Bay, it drains Skunk Net, it drains Bumps River and the Centerville River, and they all flow into East Bay. But you are actually talking about disturbing all those sediments under East Bay. I think that your lack of regard for the environment, for wildlife, and for the health and safety of the people of Barnstable, it's not just an Osterville issue, is atrocious. That's all I'll say, Patrick, tonight.
Thank you for your comments, Suzanne. A couple things. So first of all, in terms of the sewer line, I understand your point when you told the town manager that you think that the town should change the phasing of the sewer line on its own into Osterville Village Center. You can't control that, you can't control that, it's up to the town council. Our company is basing our thinking on this and the route choice based on what's out there in the public. What is the current plan and what the public comments that have been made by the town manager on this issue. If we were to choose the Main Street route for the project, what the town would then do. So we're basing it off of what we've heard, what we know in the public record on that. In terms of the safety, again, there is a long history of this type of cable underground electricity transmission. It's as though we have out on these roadways, there are electricity lines on every roadway in Osterville that are.
Talk about underground electrical walls that carry that amount of power. And please, Patrick, I would like to know if AVANGRID can guarantee there will never be an explosion or fire in one of those walls. Now, that parking lot is underwater at least 3 times a year, and you're not even thinking about that. So please, can AVANGRID guarantee there will never be an explosion in one of those walls or fire in one of those walls?
Well, so first of all, any electric vaults or any underground electricity, whether it's above ground or electric ground, it all exists. It all has existed for many years. And again, the Energy Facility Setting Board and government entities who regulate this type of infrastructure would not allow it if it was exploding left and right and injuring people.
We have a lot of examples of exploding.
I let you just, let me just, I'm not counting random YouTube clips that have no sourcing as proper sourcing. I'm talking about this is a reality of if this infrastructure wasn't safe, our government wouldn't be permitted. That's really.
You didn't answer the question, but AVANGRID guarantee these things would never explode or catch on fire in our parking lot if you were to have your way.
Suzanne, we're gonna operate and make every effort to operate our infrastructure safely for our own workers who are gonna be every once in a while needing to maintain or access these electric poles. I'm not in no position to make a guarantee like that.
Okay, that's the answer to my question, Patrick.
What I do know is that we take as a company safety very seriously. Suzanne, we're not gonna send our workers into an electric ball. I have seen, here's something that has been in the news that I think is a good case. There was a case in Boston a few years ago where some Eversource workers were maintaining an underground electric ball. Someone made a mistake and didn't depower that electric ball before the workers went there. They thought they did, but they didn't. So when they got the cable that they thought was depowered, some type of incident or injury by those workers, that was a very major, big problem happened.
That was an explosion.
I don't know whatever you want to call it, but that was a pretty narrow mistake that was really, that injured people.
And
That
some of
happens-
these things explode without.
And that happens with gas plants, that happens with above ground electric lines, that happens with any type of power infrastructure.
You answered my question. Thank you, Patrick. You can't guarantee it.
Understood, thank you.
Thank you.
Pete?
Patrick, just a question on the cables again. Came up over the winter, one of the engineers that was here, I forget his name, and a gentleman had asked how much heat that these cables would give off. He didn't have the answer. It took him almost 3 months or 3 meetings before he could answer that question. And he's the expert, or he's the engineering expert on these cables. I find that highly, highly disturbing. Why he did not have an answer for that the first time around, that should be right off the top of his head. And we're supposed to believe everything else that's going on? That's my comment.
Understood. Well, we're early in this project, we have a lot of that information in terms of exactly, we're gonna have the cables in a cement duct bank. The cables will be a high power, high temperature magnitude inside the cables, but outside the cables will be much more limited heat coming off them. That will be suppressed by the thermal concrete, the concrete that the duct bank is encased in. As we're thinking about, and I can find these, as we're provided to, I know your role with the Common Water District. This was a big part of, I know you brought up bacteria in water mains. If there's any possibility of these offshore wind cable duct banks on the roadways heating up common water mains, the proximity and why there's been relocation in some cases of moving water mains in the common district farther away from the duct bank is to prohibit any of that from happening. And the entire roadway route will be designed based on all that information of any possibility of providing heat, mitigating or preventing by separation under the roadway, any heating up of the common water infrastructure. So I don't know if that information and full modeling is done yet at this stage of our energy facility design board process for Commonwealth Wind, but
We don't know.
I don't know standing here, but this is the whole basis of the agreement that the Common Water Commissioners made with Vineyard Wind is based on that type of information of making sure that there is no impact to common water infrastructure and using modeling to make sure that any heat, any minor amount of heat that makes it outside of the thermal concrete of the duct bank into the dirt under the roadway doesn't have any impact on utilities. in the roadway.
That's right. Why didn't the engineer know that? Though? Why didn't the head engineer know that?
I'm sure, I mean, we can find the filings.
I'm just asking.
I'm not sure.
That's disturbing, very disturbing.
Pat, we have a question for the Zoom.
Okay.
Just take one. And I just want to let folks know as well, we had one of our colleagues who is our permitting manager for this project also just she sent me a message and wanted me to pass on as well. So on the 1200 number, a lot of our design is done to that 1200 megawatt number, which is the 100% capacity. That is every single turbine is running at 100% capacity all of the time for a long period of time. That's the mass amount of energy these cables could take. That's actually a pretty rare occurrence. The average amount is about 50% capacity, which is about 600 megawatts. So she just asked that I pass that along as kind of another point of conversation for this. So again, so everything is designed for 100% capacity, right? We want all of our cables and all of our design work to be the fullest capacity that a project could run at. Not all the wind is not going to be blowing at its strongest, at its most efficient mode at all hours of the day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it is, our projects are not running at 100% capacity 24/7, 365. So
This will do a Zoom and then Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Zoom person.
hi, Sophie, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I only have one thing to say about the explosions and the safety. Norfolk Southern. They were safety minded too. And they dumped vinyl chloride and ran a burn pit. And nobody's going to sell their house. But that's not why I called. I called because I am a wheelchair user. I'm a cripple. I love that pier. I use it. Sometimes my only beach is the parking lot. And I'm sure you don't understand what that's like. Cause you wouldn't, but here's my question. How are you gonna mitigate me? I hear you're gonna mitigate. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Sophie, and for joining, and bringing your perspective, on this to the table. So, that access to the handicap accessible pier at Dowsers Beach is really important, and we've heard that from many Osterville Village Association meetings that we've been to over the last year, and all of these meetings, heard that a lot of folks in written comments. So we designed, there'll be a phase of the construction of the Dowsers Beach parking lot where we're in the far end of the lot, in a fenced off area as we have it planned, nearest to the handicap accessible pier. Our plan would be to keep a corridor, a part of the parking lot, closest sort of facing East Bay, in that lane that would remain open. The fencing would not be in that area, and we would keep it clear of snow and debris. We would have someone on site to assist anybody, whether it's someone in a wheelchair, or someone with a stroller, or other needs to get through that area, to get around the fenced off construction area out to the handicap accessible pier. So we've heard the importance of that. We're as part of our planning, we are planning to maintain that accessibility, including during those winter months for anybody who either wants to walk, or use a wheelchair or other means of getting out to there. Besides vehicular traffic, you'd still have to park in the sort of front end of the lot, and then walk or use a wheelchair or a stroller, et cetera, to go through that sort of lane that'll remain open and cleared, to get out to the pier. So that's our plan.
So let me repeat it and make sure I got it right. There's gonna be a fence area. I'll be able to get in through the construction stuff on the parking lot. There'll be people there while you're doing work who will help me if I need it to get onto the area and get out. Is that what you said?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know what I have to say? That sounds really peaceful. That's why I go to the ocean, man. That's it. I'm out. Bye. Norfolk Southern.
Larry,
Yeah, two quick things. Ask Stan Tech, I think the design might be at 125%. Of design.
For the 1,200.
Yeah, that might be 125.
Yeah, we can check in on that.
Which is then added safety factor there. But there's a lot of questions about the cables and the heating and everything. Is Prismia involved in this project yet?
yes, yeah, as part of the Commonwealth Wind proposal, we committed both the Commonwealth Wind cables, and the Park City Wind cables to Prismian to help compel them to build that facility in Somerset.
So why don't you have a rep from Prismia come here and explain to design the cables?
Sure, we can do that. I mean, I know I mean, as always, earlier back in December, January, we heard a lot about health, questions that folks had about any cancer risks, and that's why we had Chris Long come in February to detail that specifically. I'm hearing now a lot of questions about the safety of the duct banks and fire risk and all that. We'll have people who are much more educated on this matter than myself come here and speak on that in detail. Takes folks' questions. We'll have those folks at the next meeting.
I mean, I know how to get this information. Most of the other residents don't, and to be fair to them, they need to be, either given, where to get the information, or maybe can get it themselves, but, these are very serious questions, and they need to be addressed. And, we need help getting those answers.
Absolutely, and that's why we do these meetings. We try to hear from the community, and then whatever the topic that we're hearing that are unanswered questions, or that we feel like we need to get into more depth in, we try to do that at the next meeting. That's especially you and others who suggested, why don't you have some meetings that are focused on a specific area? Today, we tried to focus on the roadway choice. We haven't really talked about the roadway choice much in recent months. Next time, after this, we'll talk about safety and the duct tanks and some of this we're hearing today. We're always trying to be responsive on that.
Well, the cable is
sir.
supposed to be going through the well water, our well field. Where you're gonna put this substation is right above our well.
Sure.
So, where are you gonna protect from it being increasing the temperature there? It's not like.
These are nowhere near any of our wells.
Yeah.
Please let the gentleman ask the question.
Well,
Please,
that's
ma'am.
right there.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of much less profound points to make that have already been made. I'm very respectful of what the discussion has brought so far. My name is Dennis Berkey. My wife and I are year-round residents. Our conflict of interest in this is we live on Weano Avenue.
There you go.
On the corner of Weano and Bates, just past the Catholic Church. And I have two suggestions for you. One is, and by the way, we've met already,
Oh, yes, yeah, but nice to meet you, yeah.
You made a presentation at the Cape Cod Tech Council.
Yes,
and I made a comment about the business district,
Yes.
and I'm gonna repeat it here.
Yeah.
I think it's a profoundly important consideration, the impact that this preferred route would have on what you refer to as the business district. We think of it as the business and cultural district. And it's about the lack of access to the businesses, to the churches, to the post office, to the library. It's a very important piece of the culture of Osterville that will be impacted. So my plea to you is think about the expense to the citizens for the lack of access to the life aspects that they're used to having as they navigate Main Street. And the second thing is about this sewer business. We'd really like a little more clarity about what the realistic possibility is of the efficiency of combining the sewer installation with your installation. And in particular, we've noticed the only plan we've been able to find for the sewer plan is to bring it out Weano Avenue just to the Catholic Church, about 2 doors before you get to our house. It makes a west turn and never gets to us. So you're talking about displacing a lot of people on out Weano Avenue and on that little piece of East Bay when you think about the preferred route. And just to enhance the rhetoric a little bit, keep those things in mind.
Yeah.
And to whatever extent you can educate us, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Dennis. And
By the way, I'm a mathematician and a recovering college president, so that's the handicap in my public rhetoric, but we do think about this.
Thanks so much, guys. And I just said your last point, I really would encourage you to talk to, I think Councilor Cusack, I really encourage you to talk to your town councilor, Paul Cusack, to Griffin Bowden from the DPW or town manager else. I always want to be careful. I don't want to, I don't speak for the town, I don't work for the town. So that's, you know, in terms of what the town may or may not do. I try to present, including as part of this, any information that's been publicly stated at prior meetings by town officials. Try to help point people in the right direction, like, you know, looking at the right town council meeting or the discussion, but you have to ask your town officials on that. I presented here what we've seen and heard from especially the town manager in his public meetings here in this room, but you know, further exactly scenario planning, the how sure of the thing they move the sewering up. I can't speak to that. Yeah,
Yes, if I could add on to Dennis's, you know, this big picture, and once again, this isn't going to be as profound, but one question before I go on, if all of this took place under the most desirable time, when would all the construction be done in the area? What are we looking at?
we're talking about in non-summer months, so we're talking about probably late September to sometime in mid-May.
No, final.
Sure.
Sorry.
So
last
2 years
day.
construction, 2 consecutive years, starting in September and May. We're probably talking right now, starting in September 2025, going till May 26th. Then year 2 would be September 26th into May 27th. So it'd be done in 2 years, similar to Vineyard Wind. They started in September, October 21. They went to May 2022, and then they're just now finishing the second year, which started in September 22, finishing next month, May of 23. So that's kind of the deal. 2 years.
2027 is the most optimistic.
Yes.
Okay, so, and it gets back to the quality of life. Its issue is my heart breaks for the people who live on Strawberry Hill or go down Benny's Lane or anything, and what those people are living with day to day, I can't even imagine. And so I look at where I live and I go, okay, the last couple of years I've lived with this to the east of me, to the north of me, to the south of me. Now I'm looking at Dow's and I'm going, the north to me, the west of me, it's the south of me. And I'm thinking, quality of life construction for that many years has an impact, okay, on the businesses, but I'm also inconvenienced when I want to get to your business, okay? So I think that I don't really hear is that collective impact and the contribution that the people in Barnstable are making with 3 landings in this town in a very short area. You talk to people who live up in 6A, it's a nit for them, okay? They're not really paying attention. we who have to be on 28 all the time, we're late for meetings, or you're trying to plan. So that collective impact, okay, of that many years being surrounded by construction for summer traffic. Okay, so when your guys are not doing your work, so I think about the pollution from the trucks, I think about the noise from the trucks, I think about the destruction and that kind of thing. Big impact on quality of life, and I think we're here because of the quality of life. This is a long-term project, I understand the impact. Is any compensation, anything being done for people in Phineas, who they're gonna tear up Phineas again? Or any of these towns where people are living with this on a day-to-day basis, pretty expensively? Is there anything being done for those homeowners? And even when you use those routes, I mean, I look at some of those tiny little streets that we have to go down behind 28 and behind, yeah, okay, those little streets, I mean, those people have got a lot of traffic that's been going. So what about the people who are most impacted if this goes forward with the day-to-day quality of life?
Understood. This is a great question. I guess just in a light anecdote, a friend of mine recently sent me a picture of a sort of aerial of all Cape Cod and the ocean around. He said the only place there's no construction right now is in the blue, is in the ocean. So it's obviously, you go across the Cape.
Construction in the blue as well.
Yeah. There's construction everywhere in the Cape right now, particularly impacting all of the southern facing communities facing the impacted sound as a sort of focus of implementing sewering in all communities, you know, Dennis and Yarmouth, you know, Harwich and Orleans and Mashpee as well. Obviously, you know, a lot of folks probably seen the construction of 28 in Mashpee for sewer installation as well. So there's a lot of construction in the southern communities on the Mid Cape and Lower Cape. And it's a real pain. I totally understand that. And our projects are a part of that. Absolutely. You know, the majority of it is other road resurfacing or sewer installation, other projects, but we understand that there are a lot of folks who have had it up to here on road construction, and it is disruptive and it is difficult, and totally understand that. Specifically your question, I don't know if I'm the best, you know, for folks who live on residential roadways, the best thing we can do or what we're focused on is having the construction be done and move as quickly as possible. One of the things that was really key, I think, that we learned from the Vineyard Wind project is the poor road resurfacing on Craigville Beach Road. It's very bumpy. It's however it was done. God, that team got a lot of complaints. I've heard about it for months. I wrote it. I could tell you, roller coaster. It also slowed some people down because sometimes people drag race on Craigville Beach Road by Craigville Beach, which is not safe, but we need to figure out as a team and our construction folks and the contractors we use clearly need to figure out a better way to do those interim repaving so that even at the final code, once it's finally done, will look great, but those interim repaving steps so that it's not just terrible for people to drive on. They understand that. And then planning the sequencing potentially for this project as well of sewering and then duct bank installation to get through people's areas and homes as quickly as possible, get past them. So in terms of mitigation, that's the best thing I think we can do is do better repaving so that folks aren't driving in terrible roadways that have been in the midst of construction, and then get through there and get north as quick as possible and get out of folks' hair. So that's how we're going to do it. George.
So I think a lot of very good points and concerns have been raised this evening, and I very much appreciate the fact that these kinds of public forums are made available so that those concerns can be aired, and that you are going through apparently a very deliberate process of hearing those concerns, and where you don't have an answer, finding them and addressing them. I've been here for 40 years and have enjoyed Dowsers Beach and have shopped in stores. I've seen stores come and go in Osterville Village long before there was any construction on the roadway. It's a difficult process to work here, particularly in the off season. What concerns me is something the gentleman in front of me raised, which is some attention to data and science. I spent 10 years as the president of the Environmental League of Massachusetts, where we spent a long time investigating offshore wind. And a lot of the questions or concerns I hear raised about apocalypse now, about little children being at risk of energy and heat and destruction and the apocalypse of the world, Well,
didn't say that.
the reality is, well, the signs say save Dowser's Beach as though it's being destroyed.
Yeah.
So if I may, the reality is America is 20 years, 25 years behind the world. And none of these transmission lines are really anything new. They're all through Europe, from the North Shore, Scandinavia, and Germany. They're all through the coast of China that have leapfrogged us in terms of clean energy and new technology. And we've yet to hear about the apocalypse on the coast of Copenhagen or anywhere else. Facts are facts, and every so often, people need to listen to the facts. There's always going to be some sort of outlier science report that says the world is flat. But if the reality is, this science is proven.
Yeah.
And I've also heard, this stuff about not being able to access Dowser's Beach and the destruction of wildlife habitat and ecosystems. Again, that has been studied so thoroughly, not a grain of sand will be moved on Dowser's Beach. There'll be no construction in the parking lot during the summer season. And I, for one, while I don't mind paying taxes, I don't like paying taxes, and I've paid them here for 40 years. And the notion somehow that we're gonna get some income from this, the notion that the sewer lines in coordination with the transmission lines can save us money on the sewer lines. I like to save money. The notion that the sewer lines might come sooner so that our ponds and estuaries aren't fed nitrates and phosphates for our septic systems. I like the idea of accelerating the sewer lines. So again, unless somebody can show me a well-studied, scientifically peer-reviewed study that suggests transmission lines are in danger of blowing up, in danger of hurting our children, in danger of destroying our businesses, I have a difficulty in accepting some of the concerns, not all of it, but some of the ones that I've heard.
Thank you, George. Really, I really agree with your comments, and we're gonna use reputable contractors. We're gonna use reputable, companies to do this work. We're gonna install electric infrastructure that's well made. We're gonna maintain it. You have financial, people talk about your financial, you mentioned Suzanne, you have financial interest for the infrastructure we install to work safely. We want it to work and work safely. We don't want failing infrastructure that's gonna explode or cause
Well,
problems.
listen,
We're gonna install infrastructure.
may I
that's
just
meant to
address
last
that?
for decades.
Because I feel like that was a pussy attack. You need to broaden your reading, because there have been so many issues in Europe with many towns, villages, cities, and even countries asking for this infrastructure to be removed. Because,
Please.
I'm sorry?
Site photos, send us a site.
I will.
Send us a
You know,
site.
the thing is, I've been reading, researching, and writing about this since August. And
And I
to
have
be
for 10
made to
years.
sound
And I
like
have
I'm
for
some
10
kind of
years.
idiot because you want to use hyperbole is really insulting. So,
I'm not sure I mentioned anybody.
no, you talked about, like the apocalypse now and all that. Electrical vaults do fail. And if they fail in a place like Dowser's Beach, there could be injury,
Ah,
all right?
the apocalypse, injury.
That's not the apocalypse.
You're talking about hundreds of people
Okay,
in
all
a
right.
parking lot.
I'm talking
You can't
about
escape.
people stuck on a beach where there's been an emergency and they can't get off the beach, okay?
My apologies when I said.
Yeah, you're really, out of line as far as I'm concerned.
Speak as public
Um,
meetings.
I think Christina.
You're
wants
out
to
of
add another
line.
about the microtunnel.
Christina, would you like to chime in? Oh, wait, microtunnel. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey,
Please.
good evening, everybody. Christina Hoffman from AVANGRID. Nice to see everybody there tonight. I wanted to just jump in and provide a little color, a little more detail about one of the optional features that was discussed about using bringing the cables underneath East Bay as opposed to going over them. And using, a micro tunnel, using some sort of a tunnel underneath there. And so I wanted to just qualify that with some details about the depth at which that goes underneath the water body. I heard some discussion about potential for contaminated sediments at the bottom of the water body. And one of the reasons that we are proposing to use, or we would consider in looking at the alternatives to use a microtunnel, is actually to go deeper to avoid disturbing the sediments on the bottom of the water body. That's one of the benefits of using a microtunnel, you know, should we end up going that route and using that alternative. So the reason that we would use it is so that we didn't have to dig a trench through the bottom of the water body and lay the cables there. But instead, we would bore a hole underneath the water body, many, many feet below the bottom of the water body. And that is intended to avoid disturbing of those sediments, which could be contaminated or not. I don't have any details on that. But that was just wanted to qualify that piece of our potential project. Thanks.
Thank you. How many feet would you be doing the micro tunnel?
You know, I'd have to look on what the preliminary drawings show. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but the whole intent is that it is deep enough such that it doesn't surface, that it doesn't actually disturb the bottom of the water body.
You know the Sagamore Lens runs under East Bay, right?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? What runs under there?
Runs under East Bay. The Sagamore Lens, which is a part of the solar.
that's
Yes.
Would
Yes.
would your micro tunnel be deep enough to get into the transition zone there?
No, I don't believe that it would.
Because it's 50 feet low.
Yes, and just on that, Suzanne, I mean, I know you were part of a BOEM public comment hearing where that was discussed, and BOEM, this federal agency, and discussed that in detail, saying that no, that our operations and even the horizontal directional drilling 50 feet below the beach and the seafloor off the Dowsett Beach would not be deep enough to in any way pierce or impact the aquifer. But I know we talked about this a lot. We had a hydrologist from our State Tech consulting team at our February meeting, and was discussed in detail that there is no popping of the aquifer. It's not like
I know
aquifers
that.
are limited,
I know
but it's
that.
not, and it's not that any, first of all, the drilling wouldn't be deep enough. And even if it did in any way enter into that clean water aquifer, Sagamore Lens or whatever it's called, that wouldn't mean that salt water would then be flowing through that water aquifer water body into inshore wells and public drinking water supplies farther north from Dowsett Beach. So we answered that in great detail in that February meeting.
And I didn't accept the answer because what I'm talking about is the transition zone. Penetration of the transition zone has the potential to harm the aquifer. I'll just put it that way, to contaminate the aquifer. And the Craigville, I'm sure you have studied as much as I have, the Craigville River Estuary study from 2006.
I haven't, on this topic, I tend to defer to the hydrologists and experts.
Okay.
From our team.
All right. I just think that's an important study and it has a lot of details.
Sure, if you want to send it to me, I'd love to read it.
It's online.
Okay, see?
Hey, I want to say a couple of words. I'm Zenas Crawford. I run a little nonprofit in town called the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition. I grew up here. I've been here virtually my entire life. And I'm very passionate about the area and the water, as is are many people here like Sue. And you know, I hope we can keep a good and balanced and respectful conversation going for an area that we all love and hold dear to our hearts. And I appreciate the comments that George has made. You know, I think that one of the things to keep in mind here is we haven't been taking care of our house on Cape Cod for decades and decades and decades. And anybody who lives on Cape Cod knows if you don't take care of your house, if you don't paint, if you don't treat things right, they start to fall apart. And you know what? That's what's going on here, is we've got a crisis in terms of water quality, which has nothing to do with power lines coming in, by the way. It's because of the septic waste that we've been putting down for decades and decades, which has contaminated our lakes and ponds, our estuary, and in fact, even our bays and sounds.
Can I just
And so-
interject one thing?
You
So
can-
we don't
Can I speak,
need,
sir?
we don't need a private company to come in.
Can I
and put
speak?
Huge power cables in our roads. to tackle our
Can I please finish my comments?
I think it's worth interjecting.
Well, you can interject that. I'll tell you what, I run a nonprofit,
Yeah.
but I don't, can I finish, please, sir? Please, be respectful. That's one of the things I hate.
Completely respectful, but
No,
I'm
you're
making a
counting me out.
comment in the middle of your comment. And there's nothing disrespectful about that.
Okay, here's my view on some of those comments, mister. As far as I last checked, we still live in the United States of America, which is still, last I checked, a capitalist system, which is run by people that make money. This is not a socialist country yet. So I don't really have a problem with the idea that people make money. Doesn't mean you don't need checks and balances. It doesn't mean you don't do something that one great president once said, trust but verify. I believe in the water quality.
So maybe you should
do
have
a
some
social
authority or
study. I mean, seriously.
Don't give up.
So
the
can I finish my
economic
comments,
question. Yes,
please?
please do.
So I'm concerned about water quality.
Right.
And I'm concerned about bringing sewer into our town. I'm concerned that our water line right now running down Main Street right behind here is from 1936. Bringing drinking water, maybe your house, sir. And so I'm concerned about the idea that we should upgrade our infrastructure in this town, in our community, and on Cape Cod. I think that's critical. I think that actually this project could help. But in the land of trust but verify, I have questions too. So I happen to believe that sea level rise is a real and serious consideration and threat. And so one question I would have for Pat and AVANGRID is, what would happen in maybe 10 short years, maybe 15? To Sue's point, Dowsett Beach may in fact be underwater. In my view, the biggest threat to Dowsett Beach is sea level rise going to be underwater. I don't think it's really too many decades away before we lose Dowsett Beach, Craigville Beach, Keys Beach, all the beaches on Cape Cod. Do some reading on that. Sea level rise is a real threat. It's going to change Cape Cod dramatically, has over time. I mean, that's a question that I would ask is what happens when ultimately these boxes are actually underwater?
Yes.
Because they could end up underwater for an extended period of time, maybe for decades. So I think that's a real legitimate question. So I'm not saying we just automatically say AVANGRID, great, everybody's wonderful. But I do see a very real element of people that are in what I would classify as the, not in my backyard camp. But we have to dig up the roads to replace the water line that's coming down the street here. It's 1936. It was meant to last 50 years. It's so overdue. We're gonna have a blowout. We're gonna have to replace that water line. We need a sewer desperately. Somebody made a really good point, which is, well, how come it just stops down by the church? Well, I'll tell you why. That's because a sub lens right here is considered a development area. And so there's no gating on the number of bedrooms that can go on down in that area toward Wiano because of some zoning that occurred years ago by a second cousin of mine, Jimmy Crocker. And so that allowed a extensive development because the view was that wastewater going into Nantucket Sound doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because it gets flushed out. And so I don't happen to adhere to that view. I think that's a mistake. I think we need to clean all the water around here. But that's why it stopped at that point. That's why there's no plan to bring sewering into extended areas beyond the town of Osterville. Downtown Osterville, critical, but if you look at the mapping for where the sewer is gonna go, there are huge white spaces that get no water treatment at all. And that's why we're working on alternative septic system technology. George is well aware of that. We've been doing a lot of advanced work over by Shubal Pond to prove some new technology out that we think is going to offer a real opportunity to clean up the water here. But in the meantime, I do believe that with the right checks and balances, this project has an opportunity to be beneficial for the town, for the community, for the citizens. And oh, by the way, it's separate from my water work, but I actually believe it's important for the planet to have checks and balances on on power generation. Whether it's nuclear or wind power, other sources of power, I think we need that. And that's where I'll stop. But I hope we can remain civil and I apologize for the little back and forth we have. I hope that people are allowed to talk independently and have an opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Just everybody here can say whatever they want. We don't need any back and forth or interrupting. Not cutting anybody off. If anybody wants to make their comments, everybody here is welcome to get up and speak and share their point of view. Hold on, I'll get you in a second, Hector. Let me answer Z's question first. So Z, to your question, yes, we are designing and will design as this project advances in its environmental permitting, and we'll detail this in our future environmental permitting applications and the next iterations of our energy facilities siting board applications, that we are going to design the infrastructure that'll be under the Dowsett Beach parking lot, potentially under the Dowsett Beach Causeway Road, all of those cables, those joint bays that Suzanne mentioned, all designed to be underwater. Because yes, I know last December, there was a king tide and the storm, most of Dowsett Beach flooded. A lot of folks sent me photos. of that and sent us photos, and those were well publicized, we know we're gonna see more of that. So yes, we are designing that infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, to be designed to be permanently underwater. Because based on some of the modeling you see out there, there could be, 10, 20 plus years from now, you could have the beach regularly, even not during king tide periods, underwater, partly underwater. So we're making that design choice particularly. I do just want to, on that similar note, I think you may have, somebody mentioned the Block Island wind farm and what happened with that cable. I hear that a lot. That cable was installed. I don't know the name of the beach in Block Island where it went under, but they trenched. That was done by Orsted, and they dug a trench and they buried the cable under it. They chose an eroding beach instead of an accreting beach, which is the opposite of eroding. And they trenched it, and then as that beach eroded, the cable unearthed from that trench that they had trenched, and they dug up through the beach to do that. We're not doing that. We're drilling deep using horizontal directional drilling under the beach, under Dowses Beach, which by all credible sourcing is considered an accreting beach, just like Craigville Beach and Cobbles Beach are. So these aren't beaches that have any expectation under current sort of forecasting to become eroding beaches. So they're stable beaches, and we're trenching, or pardon me, not trenching. We are drilling them deep under the parking lot instead of trenching to not have that type of outcome of the cables unearthing or coming closer to the surface of the sand of the beach or the parking lot than they were intended to be.
But after the beach and on the way out, because my husband went down and talked to the gentleman down there at Coco.
Sure.
And once you get on the other side of the beach, you are trenching it. You're putting these air things to drop it down.
Yeah.
Now, storms come back, and so I don't know how long that's gonna stay covered all the way out.
Well, it's designed, Cape, unfortunately, you're gonna see sea level rise, and especially those areas are gonna be flooded more and more, so the infrastructure of these projects anticipates that.
Hurricanes and storms that are here, I just think it's the wrong technology for the East Coast. For our wind, our storms, and they don't have these storms in Europe, they don't have these.
Well, they still have, they don't have hurricanes, it's a lot of bad storms. Hector?
Yeah, so I'd thank you very much for the presentation and for all the comments, and Z for your comments. I would just say a couple of things. One is what I said to Z is we clearly have a water quality issue here. Fresh water, sewage, nitrogen, phosphorus. I think this town and this community is very capable of conquering that issue over time. It will take a lot of money. We do not need offshore wind projects, 1, 2, 3 of them, bisecting our community to solve our water problem. That's one statement. Secondly, you talked, in this presentation, you alluded to it, but in the February presentation, you put up a slide saying all the financial benefits that would accrue to the town of Barnstable.
Yeah.
Very few of those were commitments, legally binding commitments. A lot of it is, as we used to say in the banking business, on the come, hypothetical. So in line with your commitment to, and this is going to be my third question, to your commitment to make the town, leave the town better than you found it when you came in with these 3 massive projects. I would propose that AVANGRID Inc., parent company, or Iberdrola, the 81% owner of AVANGRID Inc., that you guys put on deposit in an escrow account, however many billions of dollars it would take if we had some major calamities, if we have piercing of the aquifer. And the money would be for people like Joanne's business on Main Street in Centerville. If she loses revenue, she could tap into that account. That would be a real statement of AVANGRID's intent. If you put your own cash in an escrow account for people to use and for the town to use if calamities occur.
Understood.
That would be a real concrete statement, not to just throw out this happy talk about we're going to try to do this and that. Put $1 billion in an account for our benefit. And then the third, that's just a statement. And then my question, and it's a simple question. You said AVANGRID is gonna leave the town better off than you found it. So can you please list all the ways that you can improve our town as opposed to make us worse off?
Okay, sure, Ken, would you like to start? And then I might jump in if I know there's several questions there. You're on
Ken
mute.
is muted, yeah.
I'll take a crack at it. Okay, so first of all, the commitments that we make to the town are not happy talk. They're legally enforceable commitments in our host community agreements. We have one for Vineyard Wind 1. We have one for Park City. We hope to eventually have one for this project as well. So I don't agree that they're just vague promises. They're legally enforceable, binding promises. Second, I think that we sent you a note about the various ways in which our obligations are guaranteed, but among others, there will be bonds that will be required to be posted for decommissioning and for other activities. We're also going to have insurance policies that cover the types of things you're talking about. And in the host community agreement, the town negotiated a provision that allows them at their election to be named as a beneficiary of those insurance policies. So there's many layers of backup to make sure that we meet our commitments. And then, of course, the other piece of this is there's going to be, if these projects go forward, there will be revenue streams from long-term contracts, which I know you're familiar with. So there's a lot of financial security in multiple different ways behind our obligations. I think you asked what are the benefits of having the projects. There are many. One is we've been talking about is the acceleration of and also partial payment of the costs of sewering. Barnstable is leading the pack in terms of resolving this problem on Cape Cod. And I think that the Vineyard Wind 1 project and Park City and this project are helping the town be a leader in addressing water quality, definitely lowering the costs for the town because we take on the opening and closing of the road. We share engineering and design expenses. And this very project we're talking about tonight may catalyze the town to accelerate by as much as 10 years its decision to install sewer lines in Osterville. So that's a big benefit. Another big benefit is this project will be financing significant upgrades to the whole electric grid on Cape Cod to make it more reliable and address things like power outages that are a problem and will continue to be a problem on Cape Cod and the rest of the state. And then the third piece is providing energy, clean energy. Another source of energy. We are dangerously dependent upon natural gas as our main source of electricity. That exposes all of us to major risks when gas supplies get tight and major price gouging when gas supplies get tight. We're in a state where fossil fuel plants are retiring. Pilgrim has retired. We all know that. We need new sources of energy and especially clean energy. And so this project, we've talked about this before. Most of the electricity from these projects will actually go to Cape Cod or Boston, notwithstanding the contracts. That's how the flow of electrons go. And so we're providing power at a good cost. We're providing reliability benefits to the whole Cape, and we're accelerating and defraying some of the costs for clean water in Barnstable. So I think there's an awful lot of benefits that this project provides.
Pat, we have a question on the Zoom.
Okay.
To take, if that's all right.
Good.
So our question is from TJ Dymick. Can you please address the status of your bidding process? I was under the impression that you had to withdraw your bid, but will be allowed to rebid in the future. Why are we having this discussion now unless you were assured your next bid will be approved? So Ken, I'll pass that to you.
Okay, well, I have the mic. I might as well do that one. So that's basically true that we expect to rebid in the solicitation, which is going to come out imminently. We're told it's a matter of days or weeks when we'll see that request for proposal. We're going through with this process because we want to get this project built as quickly as possible. The climate change can't wait. The Commonwealth can't wait to meet its climate goals. So as we're pursuing the bid, in parallel, we're pursuing the permitting and development of the project. So we're not going to wait and sit on our hands and see what happens with the bid. We're going to move forward. And if that bid doesn't work out for us, there's other ways of selling the power and developing the project.
What are they?
There's other buyers of electricity. There will be other RFPs in the future. We're offering something that this country and the world and this state desperately need, which is a source of reliable, clean, carbon-free energy, and that is going to be in demand over the future. So whether this bid works out or not, this project is going to be viable.
You have the financing, Ken?
Yeah, I'm confused. How can you do that?
No, we don't have the financing. That comes once we've got a contract.
Is someone else going to bid as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Are there other bidders?
Are there other bidders in line? Are they waiting?
We assume there are other bidders, but these auctions are done without the bidders knowing what everyone else is doing. The whole idea of a competitive auction is that if people bid without knowledge of what their competitors are bidding, and they're incentivized by that to bid their lowest price and provide the best timeline they can, and also provide the best economic development they can.
If they want you to bid, have they actually told you, Ken? I'm curious.
I'm sorry, I still didn't hear the question.
Stacy asked you, has Massachusetts told you that AVANGRID is allowed to bid? Rebid.
The best answer to that question is the RFP will be coming out in the near future in writing, and we'll all be able to answer that question definitively, whether we're allowed to rebid or not.
You don't know yet. Okay, that's great. Just don't know yet. That's fine.
Ken Slater, you just kind of confused me a bit. I think and I'm pretty sure I didn't understand you correctly. Did you say that you would build the project anyway? Whether
No.
you could.
No, what I said was if I think the question asked was what happens if you put in a bid and you're not awarded the contract. I think that was the question, and I was saying that that this solicitation is not the only opportunity we will have to sell our power. So in the event that we're not awarded a contract, there are other options for us.
Other projects?
What
I guess that's.
So I think what Ken is saying is that the state of Massachusetts run RFP process to buy offshore wind power is not the only party that buys offshore wind power. There are other states, there are other opportunities by other entities who are looking to buy large quantities of power.
So the confusion, Patrick, is, and Ken, I'm sorry we don't mean to belabor this, but if you don't have contracts with Massachusetts utilities,
Right.
will you still build Commonwealth Wind and land it on Doseth Beach? That's the question.
If we have contracts with entities other than those, the answer is yes.
Yes, I'm sure this has been covered earlier, and this is gonna be taking us way back, but what were the main factors in the siting for these three landings?
Yes.
Just in a succinct way.
That's a great question. So, and we have slides on that I can send you. We sometimes, we can spend an hour talking about everything, but so some things we don't always discuss. So how we chose Dowsett Beach. So, the existing, a big part of it is that we have a shared cable corridor for Vineyard Wind, Park City Wind, and this their newest project, Commonwealth Wind, that we permitted with the federal government, so that the cables are all basically near each other, going from south of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, through what's called Muskegon Channel, between Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, proceeding north through Nantucket Sound, and then landing in under 3 different beach parking lots in the town of Barnstable. So the first part of it is that we're sort of tied to Barnstable or nearby, maybe Yarmouth or Mashpee, but primarily the best and focus areas in Barnstable. So then the next piece is ideally you don't want to cross cables. So Vineyard Wind is sending their cables under Coble's Beach. Park City Wind will be going under Craigville Beach. So basically the main factors we had for this route choice were either another landing at Craigville Beach if that were possible, or west. So primarily we looked at first, can we do another landing at Craigville Beach? And then we looked at opportunities in Osterville or Katuitt. And why only Barnstable? Not just a shared cabling corridor. The only place where we have the opportunity to plug in power for this project is at the West Barnstable substation, because we have queue position, as it's called, which is very, very hard to get to plug in that power there. Other companies own the queue positions at substations on the South Coast, New Bedford, Fall River area, in Rhode Island. Other places that could be future places for wind power. Our competitors own them. So we invested in and spent many years securing the rights to that position at West Barnstable. So that's where the power needs to eventually go to West Barnstable. So why not Mashpee? Because if you landed, I don't know, South Cape Beach, somewhere in Mashpee, it's a much, much longer amount of road construction and long segments of 28 that are currently right now under construction for sewer installation. It would be a very, very disruptive, more than 3 years to go to Mashpee. So the best opportunity was Craigville Beach again, or Osterville and Katuitt. Where did we look? Primarily, we really wanted to do another landing at Craigville Beach, and there's enough parking lot for that. But there's only one roadway out of the Craigville Beach Road. And the Park City Wind Project is using Craigville Beach Road going towards Main Street, Centerville, towards Vineyard Wind is using the other part of Craigville Beach Road towards Hyannis. So you need the roadway space, and there's not enough space under, and it would be too much duck bank competing with the water lines, the gas lines, the sewer line under Craigville Beach Road to do another project duck bank under Craigville Beach Road. So then we went west. So the main two options we looked at the most, Dowsett Beach parking lot, Loop Beach and Katuitt. Those are probably the two that emerged the most. Why not Loop Beach? Smaller parking lot, right up against homes. It's too small to do the space we want to need. It's kind of a multi-tiered parking lot. And the water depths off of there into Katuitt Bay are a problem. This is much more shallow off of that beach in that part of Katuitt than off of Dowsett. So we also need sufficient depth of water to do the horizontal directional drilling, which Dowsett does perfectly. We looked at other private locations in West Bay, North Bay, other locations on Katuitt, and nothing, for various reasons, they're eliminated. And this is all in our permanent filings. So for us, after eliminating Craigville Beach from our landing, Dowsett Beach was the clear answer because it has sufficient parking lot width for us to do everything just within the parking lot, not disturb any of the dunes or marsh or any of the other protected natural resources in the area. And we can have the cables go out to Causeway Road, out to East Bay Road. So fit really everything we need, water depth, space of the parking lot, egress out of the beach parking lot. That's why we chose this.
So I've read your construction and operations plan that you submitted to BOEM many, many times.
Sure.
And you clearly state in there that you have to consider the South Coast variant, which you just didn't mention.
Mhm.
So the OECC is something you really purchased from the Cape Wind project. All the studies and the plans for Cape Wind were inherited, let's put it that way, by
How is that true? They were.
because they established the OECC and they did all the studies, and what you say over and over again in your COP is that as the Cape Wind study showed. So I'm assuming that you inherited much of their understanding. All right, Ken, you've already been rude to me once this week. Well, hold on. You say over and over again in your COP that the Dowsett's Beach prove unworkable or undoable for any reason at all, we have the option of the South Coast variant. Why didn't you just mention that?
Because it's only for 400 megawatts. That's a small substation of cooking it. The only other queue position we have in Massachusetts, we could do one cable there. Brand new corridor going tens of, I don't know, probably many, many miles to get to a Acushnet with very little opportunity to get to a Acushnet because New Bedford Harbor is a super fun site. There's not good locations like we have at Dowsett Beach that make sense for landing of that type in that Fairhaven, New Bedford.
So why did
area.
you tell the feds that?
What?
Why do you?
Well,
feature
I don't know
it
if Ken, you want to pick up.
Can I jump in? Yeah. at the time that we filed and mentioned Acushnet, which was a 400 megawatt alternative, we only definitively had rights. We had 800 megawatts of capacity in Barnstable. We were able to get another 400 megawatts of capacity in Barnstable, so a total of 1,200. At that point, there would be no purpose served in having 2 lines go to Barnstable and 1 line go to Acushnet. So Acushnet was sort of a option based on the facts we had at the time. It wasn't, it didn't make sense once it became clear that we could have all of the lines go into Barnstable. So that's the answer to the question. And in terms of Cape Wind, I'm baffled by that one. I mean, Cape Wind was to be located in Nantucket Sound. Our projects are, 20, 30, 40 miles away from there, using a completely different corridor to get from where they're being built to Barnstable. So I don't understand that comment about inheriting it from Cape Wind.
The part of the OECC that would have involved Cape Wind, Ken. I'm gonna look at the CIP and I'll point out by page number where those studies are referenced, okay? I'll just do that, Ken. That's all I'll do.
Thanks, Suzanne. So George and then Pete.
There's been some reference to the Energy Facilities Siting Board at the state agency, and I'm not sure everybody understands the role that plays. Developers like AVANGRID have an opportunity to negotiate a host community agreement, whereby there's a give and take on what the developer will offer to the community, and the community should aggressively seek as much as it can from the developer. If, however, there is no agreement, or if the town rejects the host community agreement, then there's an appeal to the Energy Siting Board. And the reason that was put into place was precisely when one local community says no to an energy resource that is needed by, in this case, 700,000 homes. So the role of the Energy Facilities Board is to make a determination about the larger good. So if this town rejects the host community agreement and what is offered, it will be appealed to the Energy Facilities Siting Board, which has never turned down such an appeal by a developer. This is the one opportunity we get to negotiate the best deal we can get from the developer. We can say no, that's fine. But the next step is the Energy Facilities Siting Board at the state level, which will say, let's see, 700,000 homes to be powered versus objection by Osterville. I'm just raising that because that's the process.
One point, Barnstable. One point, all of this is subject. You can't just take over the beach because you're an energy board. It has to be, go to the legislature to change the zoning of Dows's Beach. And that's what many people are opposed to. So if they don't get the change of zoning, you have to go somewhere else.
You're talking about Article
And that's
97.
where I feel
We are talking about Article
needs to
97.
be done. So I don't care what they say, you still can't take over the beach until you go.
And the
to legislature.
EFSB does not have the authority to overturn Article 97 protections. That is very clear under the Constitution of Massachusetts.
I've spent years working on Article 97 and trying to strengthen it, to protect public lands.
Good,
All
because
over the
it's very
Commonwealth.
strong.
It is
Very strong.
unfortunately overruled regularly. And I think if you look at the powers of the Energy Facility Siting Board, as I have for 10 years, you will think now is the time to make our best deal.
It's not
Before somebody else
overrulable by the EFSB, it's only overrulable by the legislature. And the legislature will only overrule the Article 97 protections, which is a constitutional amendment, if the governing body of the municipality votes by 2/3 to ask the legislature to do so, and it also has to be approved by the Secretary of EEA. That's how Article 97 works now. I don't know how it worked when you were there, but that's how it works now. And that's what we're asking town council. They do have a stop sign for this, and we're going to push and push and push for our town council to recognize our concerns the fact that Deuce's Beach is completely inappropriate for this and not vote to ask the legislature to overturn those protections.
Thanks, Suzanne. Pete?
Patrick, just a question is, haven't we had any communication with Audra Parker,
Yeah,
who was behind Save Our Sound, correct?
I've got logic a couple times, yeah.
Now, do you think she had any influence as far as the past permitting process?
The past, I mean, obviously Audra
What
had a huge role in Wind.
what Susan brought up as far as.
I mean, Audra,
What's,
well, we never really run Save Our Sound. I don't know what Save Our Sound had something to do, or the nice for them, like the sound.
Sue mentioned that before, right? Susan, the permitting,
Yeah.
the past work that was done, all the work that was.
All the studies done by Cape Wind in the OECC.
You use some of that.
I don't know, I'll look back, if you wanna send us page number to cop, I'll
Yeah.
look at it with our permitting team and see what that references.
I'd be happy
I'm curious.
Is she,
I
is
always-
she a consultant with you? I'm just
No,
curious.
oh gosh, no, I think, my understanding is Lions Technique, Pakistan is not involved or have a position.
Okay.
South Coast Wind just told Falmouth, if Falmouth doesn't ask the legislature to overturn Article 97, they're out of there. All right,
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if you got a lawyer, I know Ken's a lawyer, but I'm not gonna get into a lawyer,
well, I'm just saying that, it's a strong, strong protection for places like Deuce's Beach. It's not just this thing that somebody can say, oh, well, forget it, $700 home. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Okay.
I do also just want to make a flag that it is 6:52, so just be respectful of
Yeah.
our library staff. We would like to wrap up around 7. Happy to take as many questions, hand out business cards, continue the conversation, but our library staff has stayed late for this, so we just want to be respectful of that. So just wanted to flag for time.
Yeah, we good? Anybody else? There's a couple more. You, sir.
My name is Jerry Vigil, I live in Centerville. I had a position in the energy lab at MIT, an electrical contractor in the state of Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And I have a lot of questions that I want to ask of him today.
Yeah.
The first one is the culvert that you propose to go under or over. To me, as a contractor, it seems like that you have to rebuild that. You just can't go over or under it. Okay, the second question I have is, the electromagnetic radiation from the slices in
I'm gonna
the
start writing these
vault.
down. I'm sorry, I'm gonna start writing these down so I don't forget. Please go ahead.
The electromagnetic radiation from the slices in the vault will be exposed to humans. They won't be shielded as the cables are. And there is a strong propensity and probability those places fall, as they do in Boston. We read about it all the time, manholes blow up. Okay. Compounded with the fact that, as we discussed and heard today, that in all probabilities, manholes will be underwater. It's gonna be extremely difficult to repair a cable that has 345 kilovolts of power running through it. Okay, when Boston Edison, then now Eversource, built a high voltage line from the Stoughton plant to South Boston plant, this was years ago. They had two organizations, one from Korea, one from Japan, build the cable. It wasn't an approved product. I'm not up to speed on the construction of the cable that AVANGRID wants to use, but that particular cable had a center conductor and a pipe on the outside. It was filled with oil. It's still filled with oil. It was very kept under low wraps that cable faulted. It faulted a number of times before they figured out what the problem was. Now, with this high voltage cable, it's very difficult to fix faults in any respect. But when they have this manhole, these manholes on Dawson's Beach, I think is inappropriate. Now, it seems that people in the world don't have any common sense and they have greed, okay?
So one of the common sense points that I think, and other people can comment on it, why did AVANGRID go through East Bay and go up where the boat ramp is, where the town property, where they could build a manhole there?
Yeah.
They wouldn't disrupt South Beach at all. They wouldn't disrupt the culvert. And all the trucks and so forth that would go over this culvert, you compounded to a problem. So that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for your questions. I just wanted to write it down so I don't forget, because I'm kind of forgetting, some folks have multiple questions. So culvert first. The plans we have filed have the cables going over the top of the culvert, but under the pavement. So this is the box culvert, folks are familiar, between Finney's Bay and East Bay on the Dowsett Beach Causeway Road. As we would plan it now, we would excavate the asphalt, install the cables atop the box culvert, and then put thermal concrete on top and recover it with asphalt. The modeling that we've done show that that would not actually add any weight bearing capacity onto that box culvert. So it wouldn't put added weight pressure from what's there now on the culvert. I know folks say, well, how can that be? That's what the experts who designed this stuff, who were smarter than me, have found, and we put that in our permit filings. Will that be the final say or the final version of that? No, there's going to be lots of further evaluation and critique of that. The town of Barnstable has critiqued that element of us putting the cables under the Causeway Road, especially vehemently. So there's a lot more study to do on that, but that's the current plan we filed in our current filings, which again are going to be subject to further update and lots of discussion and review by experts and state agencies in the next several years. EMF from splices. Yes, I think you're right that splice faults may have a slightly higher magnetic field when buried on the roadway than the actual cable duct bank themselves. And Jerry's right that every couple thousand feet, we'll have a splice fault in the cable duct bank that sort of is a opportunity. That's where the manhole covers will be under the roadways, is a splice fault. They'll provide access to repaired infrastructure if needed. And I think you are right that there'll be a slightly higher magnetic field according to our models above the splice fault than above the cable duct bank on a roadway, but not much. And this is not by much, and this is all will be in the permit box. But this is buried cable infrastructure. We know electric fields coming because we know electric fields emanate from buried cable utilities of this kind. So I think the only difference there for a splice fault being slightly higher, potentially magnetic field. Difficult to repair a cable that's submerged in water. Well, obviously, if there is a problem with a cable within the Dowsett Beach parking lot, we would have to, for safety, obviously, turn off the turbines. We would have to depower while that repair is going on for the safety of the crew, obviously, to prevent any type of electrocution or any type of explosion, whatever you call it. Obviously, we turn the power off before we did work like that. And then once everything is fully repaired and tested, we turn the turbines back on. Oil-based in the cable. So yes, older generations of these types of electric transmission cable had oil running through them for temperature regulation. We are using next generation cables produced by Prysmian that don't contain oil. They contain some kind of, I don't know, Christina, and some type of really intense plastic material that's the buffer between the sections of the cable, of the offshore cable. But there's no oils running through them. That's an old version of prior cables. We're not using that. Why not go up through East Bay into the boat ramp? There's not enough space. We looked at it. Even if the town wanted to give us that part of East Bay Road to, tear up and construct, doesn't work. There's not enough space to do the landings there. We looked at it. It just wouldn't work technically. I don't know, Ken, or you want to add to that?
I don't want to add to that, but just before we adjourn, I have a suggestion which I'd like to raise, but I don't want to do that prematurely.
Well, I know we're at 7, but Larry, and then we'll end it with Ken. So you raise your hand, are you good?
Yeah, well, no, you talked about mitigation for businesses, lots of, and right now it's really, I'll say, just a lot of talk.
Mhm.
Okay, can you kind of hone in and really define what you're talking about, and are you willing to make an agreement and put it in writing for these people? You're interrupting a lot of business.
Yes, I think the way we plan to do that, and we'll start with Park City, Joanna sitting behind you. Same with Rick and Tom, who own the Captain David Kelly House. Those are two businesses, Joanne's business and Rick and Tom's business, that were especially gonna impact, we know, and the nature of Joanne's business and the Kevin David Kelly house as well are gonna be impacted by construction delays. So the way we plan to do that, and I've talked about this at other public meetings, is that we'll sit down. Joanne's going to sit down and we'll have a conversation about financial mitigation is fair. What we probably do is ask for, this is the amount of time that we anticipate, and we have a discussion on that, that would be have in construction impact. And, have a conversation of, well, during this period of time, over the prior 2 years, what was your revenue? And we'll try to help, come with the bosses, and we know it's like, we can't be like, all right, I will pay you in a couple of years, like, because then that doesn't work for a business owner who needs cash flow, to keep their business open. So that's the Park City Wind project, a couple of businesses. I've met with others, the others that are in that general area. The ones that clearly we know are gonna need our assistance are those two. Osterville, we know Adam. Main Street, there's a lot more. Obviously, Bill and Tammy at Pineapple Caper and Gail at the package store, and the super aunts who own 5 bays. And then there's others, that dentist office or some other medical, Wax by Renata. They need, Renata and Josie need people coming in person to do their business. So yeah, and that's how it's gonna be in terms of written commitment. I think the only way to do this, and we'll do this, is with each business owner. I mean, we'll work through and with the OBPA as the main business organization here in Osterville, but they would have to be individual agreements for an individual.
Just back up a little. Have you said you have sat down with a couple of businesses?
Yeah, oh yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that, yeah.
Okay, and. Are they satisfied with what you've been offering and go?
I hope so, but I can't speak to that. I don't know. Okay. Ken, you wanted to say one last thing?
Yeah, I just quickly, I see that they're turning the lights out on you, so I won't take a long time. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone for coming and their good questions. I had a suggestion just for people to think about, not a requirement, but I do want to make sure that when people pose questions, we have, the right people in the room to answer them. And Pat, you've done a magnificent job. And I'm just wondering out loud whether people would consider sending their questions to us maybe a couple of days in advance, so we have the time to think about them, but also that we can make sure that we get the right people at the open house to answer them. I think that might help. Our goal is to make sure that we do get you these answers, but I think that might make it a little better. The other suggestion I'd make, to the extent that people are kind of in their questions citing studies or data that they think, stands for a certain thing, we would love to see that data. We'd love to see what it says and what it means, and be able to see whether it applies to our project or not. So this is really not a requirement. These are public hearings. Anyone should be able to come and ask any question they want. But I'd love to have a process where we have a better chance of being able to answer your questions, with the experts, particularly the ones that require expert answers, and doing some of it in advance will help. But anyway, just a suggestion. We can continue along the track we're on, but this might help in the future.
Thanks all.
All right, thanks all.
Thank you.